Okay, let's talk about basic combat. When two units fight, they compare different numbers that are relevant for the situation. For example, you remember that we talked about unit characteristics like attack and defense and the like. So when, for example, two infantry fight, first they check their initiative. So they check initiative. They check which side won, and that side shoots first. Uh, so once, let's say that German infantry wins the initiative check and shoots first, next it is checked against which target it is shooting. So in this case we have infantry shooting on infantry, so that's unarmored targets. So we use this, let's say, soft attack value that is 9. If on the other side would be German infantry, it would defend with the ground defense number, which is also 9. In this case, that means that difference is 0, and in that case there is 35% losses, so 35% chance that each unit strength will get killed. So if we have say 10 attackers, that means each of those 10 attackers has 35% chance that it will kill a strength point of defending unit. If, of course, defending unit has more defense, that chance drops by 4%, so it would be 31% if enemy unit has a defense of 10. Enemy units are usually dug in, and that gives a +1 bonus for each level. So in this particular case, Polish unit will have a somewhat lower defense than German's infantry does, because German infantry uses MG34 machine gun that was the best machine gun of the whole war. So basically, they will have, let's say, if they have a defense of 7, you will notice that when I hover here in this part, numbers change. Note that yellow defense of the unit I'm hovering over will be 7. So that means that Polish unit will defend with the defense of 7 plus this defense bonus of 7 to a total of 14. So this will reduce chance of German unit killing from 35% to let's say 520, so to something like 15%. So that will do very little damage. On top of that, Polish unit is defended by artillery. Whenever a unit that is defended gets attacked, that combat gets interrupted, and then defending unit shoots at the attacker. This happens for artillery defending infantry against normal attacks. This happens if anti-tank gun is next to an infantry against armor. And this also happens if any ground unit is attacked and the anti-aircraft gun is next to it, if of course the attacker is plain. The similar thing happens with the fighters. So fighters can defend other bombers. So if there is a fighter next to your bomber and that bomber gets attacked, a fighter will attack the attacking enemy fighter. So it's sort of like they are escorting the bombers and defending them against the attacks. So in this case, if I try to hover over enemy unit, I will see that this will not go as planned. So I will have quite a bit of losses and very few damage done because of what I've mentioned before, but we can go around this. So what we need to do is we need to take bombers and first soften up that cannon. So you will notice that our bomber didn't kill anything, but it did cause scatter damage to the cannon. This means that in this turn, that cannon will only fire as a strength of 7 instead of 10. So 3 parts of the unit will not participate in first combat. The similar thing we can do here. So you've remembered that this unit has a defense of 7. So we will try to soften it up a bit. So we will first drop a few bombs. As you can see, it is very well dug in, and our bomber did 0 damage. However, there is a possibility that it reduced the defense. As you can see, defense is now 6. This shows that some, let's say, prepared defenses were destroyed, like trenches and bunkers and the like. Also, when plane attacks, different numbers are used. For example, we will see that for plane has an attack of 7, and defending unit will not use ground defense, it will use air defense. Infantry usually has very high air defense because they are very easy to conceal and hide. So usually tactical bombers are mostly used for point targets like bunkers, tanks, bridges, ships, and the like. Okay, now that we have reduced the defense to 6, let's see if we can do a little bit more. So we can move this infantry here so that we can approach with the cannon. Cannons are units that usually have a range of more than 1 hex. So as you can see, this cannon can attack the defending unit. Now once we fire, you will see that we did a bit of scatter, and let's repeat that with another cannon. So we did 1 damage and 4 scatter, so that unit now has 5 scatter and will defend only as if strength of 4. So it has a strength of 9 and 5 scattered, so it will have a scatter of strength of 4 when fighting. You also can see that it now has a defense of 5, which is improvement from 7. So now we attack with infantry, and you see that now we take no damage at all. So 0 damage is expected, and we will do 2 damage. This would be even higher if this cannon was neutralized, but it will fire with a strength of 7, which will cause quite a bit of scatter for our units. Let's try this combat now. Okay, so cannon did no scatter. Polish regular did a bit more than we expected, so it did 1 damage, but German regular did 4 damage, so this is a very good result, and there is a good chance that our next attack will dislodge the defender. So again, cannon fires. It did 1 scatter, Polish regular did 0, we expected that, and German regular did 2 damage. So in the next turn we will break the defenses here. As you can see, when unit is heavily entrenched, which 7 entrenchment is definitely qualifies for that, because maximum is 9 for very large towns. So when the unit is very well entrenched, you really need to plan attack, prepare the attack, and be patient. You will only, that is usually encounter heavily entrenched units only at the beginning, of the scenario, and in some major towns, so usually it pays to build up the attack and attack once you are ready. We've talked about defense bonus before, but let's take a look at it in little more detail because it's an important game mechanic. So each type of terrain has maximum defense bonus that can be achieved, and it goes from grasslands which have 0 or 1, and moves from light forest to heavy forest to hills, mountains, and large towns. So large towns have the highest defense bonus achievable, that's 9. So that gives a +9 bonus to defense, that's quite large. These maximum defense bonuses can be achieved only by infantry. All other units have either half defense bonus or 0. For example, tanks have a 0 defense bonus everywhere because they are maneuverable vehicles, and by dugging them in you get some defense, but you lose unpredictability that they have, and it was used only as a tactical measure. So let's say that net effect of dugging in tanks is 0. You get some, you lose some. Cannons and the like get a half defense bonus that infantry gets, but the infantry is by far the easiest to dug in and to get some benefit from dugging in. As we said, the grasslands have very low defense bonus. This can be improved by digging in trenches. Trenches just increase the maximum defense bonus, but it doesn't add up if, for example, trench gives a +5 and terrain already has a 7, it's still a 7. It takes 4 turns for units to be completely dug in. So if maximum defense bonus is 8, unit will get a +2 after first turn, a +2 after second, third, and 8 on the fourth turn. Similar, of course, works if defense bonus is 4, then it's +1, +2, +3, and +4 defense bonus. Next we will cover close terrain. If you consider the following scenario, 15,000 soldiers fighting 400 tanks, in one case in open plains and in the other in a town or a dense forest, it is obvious that tanks will perform quite differently. So basically all terrains that are not open terrain like a grassland will be considered close terrain. That means hills, forests, towns, and etc. And in those cases tanks receive only part of their large defense because it is considered that infantry can outmaneuver them and outflank them and climb onto them and hide behind cover and the like. And in that case tanks use only 20% of their existing defense. Pretty similar things happens on rivers. So units standing on river are considered crossing the river or forcing the river, and they are very exposed in those places, and their defense and initiative drop considerably by 50%, so they're much easier to kill. One other mechanic that is important to cover is minefields. So as you can see here, well hidden, there are minefields that are dug in, and they are invisible for all units that are not next to them. So they're invisible on the map until the unit tries to cross them, in which case they get damaged, or in a case where they move right next to them. Minefields that are undefended just perform one attack with the attack equal to the unit's ground defense value, so it will kill 1/3 of the unit usually, and if then it will be considered that unit found a way through the minefield and minefield will get removed. If the minefield is defended by a unit like this bunker here, and the unit attacks from the side of the minefield, then everything is the same, except a minefield only has 35% of being destroyed. So it can take a few turns for unit under fire to find a passage through the minefield. Another important number for the units is maneuver or evasion, depending on the medium the unit is fighting in. All units have it. It can be either from 0 to 7, and it shows the difference between different types of units. For example, light tanks might have a lower attack and defense values, but they could have a higher maneuver. This works in a way that it takes a delta between maneuver of the two units, and the unit with higher maneuver gets a bonus to initiative. And then if the unit with higher maneuver wins the initiative, it also gets attack or defense bonus. If attacking, it gets attack bonus, and if defending, it gets a defense bonus. We try to show that more maneuverable units can sometimes avoid damage or outmaneuver or outflank the enemy they're attacking. Another concept that I would like to cover is the type of damage that we have. We have either direct damage or area damage. The difference is basically you can consider it area damage is in situations where you are not sure where the enemy is, and you just try to saturate the area with a large amount of fire. So cannon fire is always area damage. Also anti-aircraft guns firing on high-flying planes are also area damage. And also level bombers, carpet bombing are also considered area damage. Direct damage works in a way one strength point attempts to kill another strength point. Area damage works in a way that one strength point tries to kill all strength point of the other unit, but with much less chance of hitting. So the difference is that if you, for example, have 10 strength points shooting direct damage at 3 strength points, you will of course kill 3 strength points roughly. However, if you shoot with that means whether you have 10 strength points of enemy or 3 strength points of enemy, you will always kill the same amount of enemy units. Next we will cover close terrain. If you consider the following scenario, 15,000 soldiers fighting 400 tanks, in one case in open plains and in the other in a town or a dense forest, it is obvious that tanks will perform quite differently. So basically all terrains that are not open terrain like grassland will be considered closed terrain. That means hills, forests, towns, and etc. And in those cases tanks receive only part of their large defense, because it is considered that infantry can outmaneuver them and outflank them and climb onto them and hide behind cover and the like. And in that case tanks use only 20% of their existing defense. Pretty similar things happens on rivers. So units standing on river are considered crossing the river or forcing the river, and they are very exposed in those places, and their defense and initiative drop considerably by 50%, so they're much easier to kill. One other mechanic that is important to cover is minefields. So as you can see here, well hidden, there are minefields that are dug in, and they are invisible for all units that are not next to them. So they're invisible on the map until the unit tries to cross them, in which case they get damaged, or in a case where they move right next to them. Minefields that are undefended just perform one attack with the attack equal to the unit's ground defense value, so it will kill 1/3 of the unit usually, and if then it will be considered that unit found a way through the minefield, and minefield will get removed. If the minefield is defended by a unit like this bunker here, and the unit attacks from the side of the minefield, then everything is the same, except minefield only has 35% of being destroyed. So it can take a few turns for unit under fire to find a passage through the minefield. So for direct damage, if you have a 10 strength points of attacker, and you will always kill 3 points of defender, whether defender has strength of 15 or strength of 3. For area damage, it depends on the strength of the defender. So attack will get more efficient if there's more of the enemy, because there's much higher chance of randomly hitting someone. So shooting area damage on a unit of strength 3 is not very efficient, while it gets very efficient if unit is overstrength and it has, say, strength of 15. Also, area damage has a tendency of creating more scatter damage, meaning most of the units will probably get scared or scared off instead of outright killed. Another important mechanics is the retreat. So if enemy unit receives a large amount of damage at once, and it is damaged, the more the damage, the higher chance of unit retreating. Unit will retreat in the opposite direction of the attack, and if there are no available free hexes, it will surrender and be effectively destroyed. Next we will talk about how planes work in Klotzen. This is a little bit different than other games of this type. So here, instead of planes moving as ground units from turn to turn, we consider planes to be based on one airfield, and unit must move from that airfield within a certain radius. So it can attack any hex within a certain operational radius, but it can only move within that radius, and it cannot move more than one turn. Also, we always consider unit to be based on an airfield, meaning even if it's outside of the airfield attacking something, it still can be attacked on the airfield. So attack on the airfield will damage the unit, although it is performing missions around the airfield, because during one day unit mostly spends time on the airfield. So we consider that unit moved, attacked away from the airfield, and landed back on the airfield, and then got attacked. This attack can be either an air attack on the airfield or land unit seizing the airfield. In the event of unit seizing the airfields, all the units on that airfield will attempt to move to friendly neighboring airfields. If none are available within the range, units are simply considered destroyed on the ground. So let's take a look at some other things regarding the planes. As I said, the most important thing is range. So airfields are currently marked with this yellow hex. It will improve later. This is a placeholder graphics, so you can click on the airfield and you see planes on the airfields as well as their status. So we can select, for example, so this means that unit can attack and move. We can select, for example, fighter, and here you can see the fighter range. so it's quite limited. So for example, it can't relocate to this other base and etc. Another thing is if you take, for example, a tactical bomber, you see that it has a slightly larger radius, although in this case Stuka Junkers 87 was still quite a short-ranged bomber. Another thing that I want to show you is level bombers. Level bombers have enormous ranges and they usually can attack all the fields in the map. So this is how units are handled. Let me show you how to easily call an airstrike. So basically, unit can perform, let's say, a bombing. Let's say that we want to bomb this unit. So what you can do is you can select an airfield, a plane, and then show where you want it to go. You can scroll out if you want to make it faster, but there is a better way. Just hover over a hex you want to attack and select either F, T or B depending on the type of the plane you want above the hex. So fighter for F for fighter, T for tactical bomber and B for bomber. So in this case this is let's say point target, so tactical bomber is the best choice. So let's press T and call tactical bomber. The nearest tactical bomber is selected. You can cycle through all the available tactical bombers that can reach the hex you're hovering over. So we, in this case, this one is okay, so we just select it and the plane will fly and bomb the hex. So this is one thing. Another thing the planes can do is they can bomb towns and airfields. So in this case we will bomb the enemy airfield. We will take bomber, so let's we hover over the enemy airfield, then select B, and then we call a bomber and bomb. As you can see, there were quite a few enemy airplanes and each of those got damaged. So airfield attacks were one of the most commonly used blitzkrieg tactics, and Germans used it well in France and initial stages of Operation Barbarossa, but it was used by all sides throughout the entire war. So this is something to keep in mind of. That's usually the cheapest and quickest way to take care of enemy air force, so use it whenever you can. Another thing that planes can do that is extremely important is interdiction. So in this case we have an enemy bomber and it is simply in patrol mode, so it didn't attack anything. It simply came to the area where that is reaching our units and is now patrolling. When we start moving in patrol radius of the plane, which is 1 hex but can be increased by commander skills, which we will discuss later. So basically, once we start moving beneath it, it has a large chance of intercepting our unit, which is in this case called interdicting. So air units interdicting the ground units. So let's try to move this tank. Okay, so it got interdicted by the enemy unit, and you can see that it received some damage. Air units can attempt more than one interdiction, but each with less chance of succeeding, but it's still quite dangerous to move. So whenever enemy unit is patrolling over your unit, you need to prioritize it and attack it with your fighters. Apart from the shown, air units are also very useful in attacking enemy towns, supply centers, and also they can be used to bomb bridges and prevent quick crossing of the rivers by enemy. So we bomb in the same way as we did airfield. We call a bomber, fly over an enemy town that we want to bomb, and attack it. You will get a message about supply counters. We will get into the details later. Currently what is important to say is towns have 10 supply counters, and a supply that comes through that town has a certain chance that it will not pass through the town if the supply is damaged. So for the town that has 3 supply damage, so 7 supply counters, there is only 70% chance that any supply will pass through that town to the units further down the railroad line. So this is a very good tactic when you have an air superiority. Just bomb the enemy supply sources and it will strangle enemy units of supply. Another thing that can happen is this actually already happened automatically. If there is a bridge on the hex, there will also be a chance that bridge will be destroyed. This only happens if there are no enemy units on that hex. So if there is an enemy unit on the hex, bridge will not get attacked. But if there are no enemy units on the hex, attack by your bomber has a chance of destroying the bridge. Bridges get repaired automatically after a few turns, but it can help you achieve your goals, block enemy movement and supply and the such. So in this case, as you can see, attack missed the bridge.